What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by the one, the only Robert Cessna. Cease, pull your mic a little closer to you.
Okay.
There we go. What's going on, Cease?
Well, we're busy getting ready for the game like everyone else. Early start. You got to start earlier.
I'll tell you what, though. The 45 minutes between the 11 o'clock and 11:45, I think, is going to make a world's difference coming off a Friday night of high school football.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not. Well, I guess that makes one of us.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. We'll be there.
Let's figure out what makes two of us on some thoughts about Aggie football. Apologies for the mishap after the game. I'm sure anyone who saw the YouTube page was probably like, what are they doing sneaking into this suite? But that video is gone, so if you saw it, good on you. If you didn't, well, that's a bummer because it was a pretty good little blooper and then accident by me posting the wrong video. We got it cleaned up. So we didn't actually get to share our thoughts to the viewers after the game because I couldn't figure out how to get the other video to upload. Technology is fun, even for the young people. So what were your thoughts from the first game since we didn't get to share them technically?
Well, obviously, in a nutshell, explosive plays on the offense, special teams way overexceeded anybody's expectations. Obviously, the transfer wide receivers come in, did a good job. To me, it came down to the running game, the fact that A&M was unable to stop UTSA for two quarters plus one drive. That was kind of interesting, and I get it was misfits, but they had misfits last year, so how do they correct that? And the fact that A&M didn't run the ball, only 308 yards, not a big alarm, only because I don't know if they were even trying to run the ball with them. So I'm more worried about the fact that A&M gave up runs, gave up yardage, 203 or whatever it was, because even with their second unit in, and let's be honest, they're shuffling the defense linemen. So that's a lot of pluses, but that was my biggest concern. Yeah,
A&M only ran, I think, 59 plays. It was not a lot of plays, and UTSA, they won time of possession. They had the ball, I think, 7 more minutes than A&M did. So, but to the Aggies' credit, a lot of the times when they had the ball, they drove down the field pretty dang quickly, and a lot of drives that were between 2 and 3 minutes.
Yeah, and actually they had a slow start in both halves. I don't think they scored in their first 2 possessions of the game, and a couple penalties, things that we saw last year. Once again, first game, you can't be too nitpicky about an 18-point win, and it was 25 until they got the consolation touchdown there in the last 3 minutes. So all in all, when it was 21-17 and they had, and
you and I kind of looked at each other.
UTSA had the ball, and I go, wow, maybe A&M wants to junk this on YouTube and go to something else.
Maybe. Well, A&M's hosting Utah State this week. This is a game A&M's going to win. They should win. It's a game that should not be 21-17 at any point of the game, probably. Utah State's picked, I think, to finish 9th in the Mountain West. They're not a good football team. They're not supposed to be a good football team this year. So, see, A&M's like a 30-point favorite. We'll just cut to the chase. Do you think they cover, and why?
Well, that's always a hard deal to say because Elko does call the dogs off. And with Notre Dame up next, to me, like let's say it's 42-0 early in the third quarter or something along those lines, why would you risk anybody? And, Bronco Mendenhall is a very good coach.
He is.
And they're going to be better than they were last year. Everywhere he's gone, they've been better. So could they score 2 or 3 touchdowns late, meaning the whole fourth quarter? Of course they could. And A&M just doesn't, to me, under Elko, he's taking care of business. So if you got the game in hand, I don't think he really cares. That being said, I would have to bet on giving the over just because of the explosiveness of anybody. A&M's running backs, I think some of the even, quote, the backups, maybe even Moreau or someone like that, if he sees a clean hole in the third or fourth quarter, he'll want to score. So I guess, and then the fact is of turnovers, I wouldn't bet a lot, I never do, on over and under because I think A&M's going to have this game in hand.
I thought it was pretty funny, the breakdown that Scott Van Pelt had of A&M UTSA on his bad beats, because I guess like last Thursday he predicted that UTSA would cover. So of course, since UTSA covered in the last 15 seconds of the game,
Yes.
he had to include that as the last bad beats of the week. I'm sure the Aggies and people who bet on A&M are hoping that's not the case again this week, but I digress. Utah State, they ran the ball pretty well against UTEP last week, which one could argue how good's UTEP, but on the other hand, this guy Miles Davis, he had some pretty good runs. He ran for 88 yards, and then Bryson Barnes, the quarterback, he can run as well. He got sacked, I think, 6 times last week, which is not a good sign for the Utah State offensive line. And I think it'll be interesting to see how much pressure A&M's defensive line gets, because they had one or 2 sacks last week? I think it was 2.
One.
It was one. It was one.
They threw the ball so quickly. They evenly had 2 quarterback hurries, because it's kind of mindless to look at those stats, because they're not relevant.
UTSA threw a lot of screens. I mean, that was very much Traylor's plan, was to get the ball out quick and try and make A&M tackle. And it was a pretty good game plan, I thought. But one thing I did think was that when McCown had to kind of roll out or run a little bit to make a throw, he was often at least flustered because of the defender in pursuit, which I think was a good sign, for A&M.
I think I like one part of this matchup, and the fact is Barnes is such a good runner. Last year in the last 2 games, he rushed for over 300 yards against San Diego State. I forget the other opponent, but my point being is A&M has a problem with these misfits. So when you got an option quarterback, a guy that wants to run it a lot, you've got to make sure go ahead and you fill your gap and stay there. So I think they're going to probably run about 20 of those. So it'll be interesting to see out of those 20 how many A&M line up right, because if it's 15 out of 20, that's not good enough, because if you miss 5 against Notre Dame, they're playing the fight song and lining up to kick an extra point. So that point, I'll be interested to see the linebackers and the safety and the cornerbacks support on Barnes when he comes around and runs the ball.
Which, to your point, a lot of us probably watched that Notre Dame game Sunday night when they played Miami. I don't know about you. I was a little surprised at how much they ran C.J. Carr. I didn't think that his skill set, they were going to run him as much as they did. But, we can go ahead and talk about Notre Dame because we're not the football team. And so I'm definitely curious to see, to your point, how A&M stacks up in those ways, because Notre Dame might pose some of those similar things based on what we saw in week 1 against Miami.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame went in with the idea of establishing love a little bit of like last year when their quarterback was Leonard was such a great guy.
He was great.
And I think they're going to keep it because they know Jeremiah Love is a given. Their running game is a given as far as the back's concerned. And I thought the freshman played better as the game went on, and he's going to be at home at Notre Dame. He's going to have 2 extra week to prepare. So I expect to see a much better Notre Dame running game in 2 weeks in South Bend. And that's another reason why, they're only playing Utah State. But if, let's say, Barnes has, 6 or 7 runs of more than 6 yards and somebody from A&M screwed up, and you can't do that. And I get it. It's tough getting excited for Utah State and the fact that it's 11:45 a.m. kickoff. You had this great game where everything went right. A lot of things went right. It's hard to be focused, but if you want to get to where A&M's going to get, you got to get those things fixed, and I'm going to be looking at the running game on both sides.
One thing I'm interested to see how this impacts the run defense is the addition of Dalton Brooks back into the lineup. He missed last week. We don't know why. It was unsaid, but he was unavailable. He did not play. Elko said he will be back this week. Look, Bryce Anderson just flat out missed that tackle on that 75-yard touchdown run. And so I'm curious. We know Brooks is one of their best tacklers on the team. Elko said he's a run and hit safety. That was what he called him this week. And so what's the addition of Brooks do for the A&M defense in the run game if Utah State can pop a couple up into that third level of the defense?
Yeah, because Brooks had his bad moments last year as well as everybody did in the secondary. And then the fact that Ricks is better this year already, Ratcliffe is better already, but they had this game now. They had that game to prove themselves over what they did last year. Brooks missed that game for whatever reason. You don't want to do that, but I will say they survived well without Brooks. Because the secondary did well on pass defense. And that was a big concern considering how well UTSA threw the ball with all the receivers coming back, and they only threw for 130 yards with their stud in and had a consolation 34, 40 yards at the end with the backup. So that being said, is they did well against the pass. So you want to keep that up, but you want to add to the running game. And we'll see how that plays out because actually, York had a really good game running linebacker, but, Scooby Williams and Sanford, whatever, those guys were kind of quiet. The rest of the linebackers were kind of quiet. So I'll be interested to see what they do in game 2.
To your point, I'm kind of curious, too. Do you think the jury in some ways is still out a little bit on A&M's pass defense, given that UTSA, they really didn't even try and throw the ball downfield a whole lot?
Oh, without a doubt, because once again, you're sitting there, the fact that UTSA is having success with the running game, I'm saying to myself, they're going to hit them with some big passes because A&M would have to, but it never happened.
Until the very end.
But it didn't count. They never had the big pass play when I thought they would, and they're good at, their history shows they're very good at throwing the ball, and they weren't able to do it. So, once again, it's overreaction on game 1. Everybody wants to overreact. The only people that don't overreact or shouldn't are the players and coaches because they know what they did right or what they did wrong. And when we were talking to Ratcliffe, he brought a good point. He said they ran the same play in the second half that they got a big gain on the first half, and we got it for a -2 yard loss. See, as a general fan, you don't see that. You didn't see that. All we saw was a 75-yard run, a 23-yard run, the 20, whatever, and that's all we saw. We didn't see, and I love the fact that Elko said one thing. He said somebody asked, well, except for 4 runs, they really had a good run defense. And Elko goes, hey, look, every game, and he's right. I've covered a lot of A&M football coaches, and all football coaches do. Oh man, if we just, if we wouldn't have stopped that 90-yard kickoff return, or if we just stopped that pass interference call, we win the game. But you basically have 75 plays a game. You're going to screw up probably 4 or 5 of them. It's to what degree you screw up those 4 or 5.
Well, any final thoughts on this matchup?
No, it's the kind of game that A&M can really get a lot out of this week if they've worked hard and practiced hard and they correct the running game on both sides. Because I don't think if they come out and pass for a lot, if they continue to do well in special teams, they're going to get no extra marks on that because they did that already. It's and how about cutting down on penalties? I mean, they came right out, and their offense is the most seasoned deal. They had penalties on their first 2 drives. And I saw a lot of football this weekend, and there was sometimes some of those teams didn't have a penalty till the second half. These people are, these days there's so much coaching done in the spring. In the summer, coaches can even have contact with these guys. You get the snap counts down. You get everybody in the right place. You shouldn't have those penalties, particularly in offense. And they had 5 offensive penalties.
And at home.
And at home.
Well, hey, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the My Nation podcast. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on the Aggies versus the Aggies. Yeah, hey, I think the Aggies are going to win this weekend.
I hate this when you have to use the noun of the team all the time. You can never say Aggies. It's like when the Tigers play. If you cover high school football, you're going to have a game where the Tigers are out there for both teams. It's just, and you hate those because
Tigers or Eagles.
Because suddenly you type along, you go the Eagles and and later someone goes, "Hey, Cessna, which Eagles were you talking about?"
All right, we'll be back next week on the My Nation podcast.